Yes, good Shabbos, Baruch. So, our Shacharit service has ended. We will not be taking the Torah out of the Ark this morning, but as I've mentioned in previous weeks, this time for learning Torah was a time to hear the words of Torah and ultimately to engage in the study of Torah. And so while we will not read this morning, hopefully we can gain some insights into the Torah portion. As I mentioned, this Shabbat is a special Shabbat, Shabbat HaGadol, given its name likely by the special Haftarah. It means the great Shabbat, the Shabbat that comes before the holiday of Pesach. We will be sitting down for Seder on this Wednesday night. We have made available a number of resources in the congregation to try and help us to connect with others on Seder night. At the very first Pesach, God instructs us in 3 days before, so right about Sunday, Monday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, this week, to take a lamb and to sit with that lamb. And it's a seh labayit, it's a lamb that was for the whole home, and the idea is that the Pesach sacrifice was eaten with others. So from that very first Passover night, it was something that we did with others. I have recorded a video of along with the JFS. I want to thank the team at the JFS here in Durham Chapel Hill for their partnership, and we recorded a Seder. I usually lead the Chavirim Seder, a Seder for the seniors in our community. Obviously, we couldn't come together this year, so we recorded a Seder that you can access on Seder night and press play and do the Seder along with us. We are also making available a Zoom Seder that I will be running, and then also we have people in our congregation who have opened up their Zoom Seders as best possible, and I just want to encourage all of us to reach out in whatever way we can while still maintaining that imperative. And it really is a mitzvah, that imperative of social distancing right now. There is nothing more important that we can do right now than to keep each other healthy, to keep ourselves healthy, to help the heroic medical healthcare workers who are doing their best to keep all of us healthy. And we just send our blessings to all of them. That the Torah portion is also Parashat Tzav, the second Torah portion in the book of Leviticus. It begins on page 613, perhaps a lucky number, propitious, in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. Vayidaber Adonai Moshe lemor. God speaks to Moshe, saying, Tzav et Aharon ve'et panav lemor. Command Aharon and his sons, saying, Zot Torah ha'olah. This is it says this is the Torah of the Olah. Here it's the word Torah probably means this is the first set of chapters in the book of Leviticus were instructions to the people about how the offerings were to be done. This one seems to be really a manual for the Kohanim, for the priests. You could say Torah here means the manual or the instructions. It's translated here as the ritual of the burnt offering. Hi ha'olah, that is the olah, al mokdah al mizbech kol halayla, which is on the place of burning on the altar all night, ad haboker ve'esh hamizbeach tu kadbo, and where it is to the fire on the altar is to be kept going in it all night. And we have a description of the many offerings that are to be made. And also we have a description of later in the Parsha of the various clothes that the Kohanim will wear as the tabernacle is going to be inaugurated, that the Kohanim will wear as part of their service in the tabernacle. So there were a few teachings that I wanted to share with you this morning, and I want to see if I can weave them together. So let me see if I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to weave these together. All right, let me see if I can do it a little bit chronologically. So the first is a beautiful teaching, about this word Tzav that begins the Torah portion. It comes from the word mitzvah. Right? It comes from the word mitzvah, and as I said, it's from where the Torah portion gets its name. God says to Moshe, "I want you to tzav, to command Aaron and his sons regarding their offerings." And the rabbis, Rashi here says, "Ein tzav ela lashon ziruz," that when you have the word tzav, command, you only have it when you're teaching about sort of ziruz is enthusiasm, and Amar Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon says, "Bioter tzarich hakatuv lezarez b'makom sheyesh bo chisron kis," and the Torah needs to teach, sort of be enthusiastic or be very, very energetic about this, especially when it comes to chisron kis, means literally when you're facing losing a kis is a pocket. And so it's when you're gonna, so what's being said here, Aaron and the sons, even with an offering which is burnt all the way up, Aaron and his sons, the priests, still get the skins of these offerings. And many of the offerings are actually ones that Aaron and his sons will actually eat from, because they don't have an inheritance of land. And so really the way that they are able to eat during their service is through the leftover meat that they are able to participate in, and the leftover grain offerings that they are able to participate in. And so there's a sense here that if the offering gets messed up, then that not only will the offering get messed up, that's bad enough, but also Aaron and his sons will lose out on essentially a way for them to, not necessarily earn a living, although the skins were probably something that they that were of value for them, but on their own parnasah, on their own sort of ability to eat. And so, one of the ways I describe this phenomenon is that you don't have to say to a child, don't eat that broccoli that I made last night. Very few children love the taste of broccoli so much that you have to tell them to stay away from it, but you do have to tell them stay away from the cookie jar, okay? Because they love the cookie jar, right? And so, God may be saying here, Tzav et Aharon, or for the rabbis, Tzav et Aharon v'banav, command Aaron and his sons about these, because they may be very desirous of them and they need to be careful. They need to obey all of the rules around these things. They may be tempted to overlook something because they're going to, if there's a problem with one of the offerings, they may be tempted to overlook it because they're hungry, and they need to be very, very scrupulous about these offerings. So, about this idea, chisron kis, I said to you that it means where you are have you're sort of, it's a lack. Chisron is lack and pocket. And for the rabbis, they meant it quite literally, the money in your pocket. But there's a wonderful teaching that I came across, and it is from Rabbi Yitzchak Meir of Gur, who in his work Chidushei Harim says, he quotes one of the rabbinic teachings that the olah, that the offering which is burnt all the way up, comes to atone mechaper korban olah al chataim she'adam choteh b'machshava, that the offering, the olah offering, comes to atone for sins that a person commits through thought. Okay, through thought. Now, I know Jimmy Carter famously said, I sinned in my heart. I committed the sin of lust, and in the Jewish tradition, we don't really. I wouldn't say that we believe that God holds us responsible for evil thoughts. Really, Judaism is more of a tradition focused on action. But I do think that we know that there are things that we just sort of, our mind wanders off to, and that we either shouldn't be thinking about them. So, the rabbis do have a sense that if, we should let go of thinking about business on Shabbat, and yet, our mind sort of wanders there anyways. So there are some ways that Jewish tradition does try to regulate thought. And when we do, and there are other, sort of more lascivious thoughts or whatever, but there are ways in which we lose focus. And the idea was that maybe God doesn't hold us so responsible, but we have a sense that, we've lost our focus, and we may need a way to either atone for that or to regain our focus. And the olah sort of corresponded to that. By the way, probably because it was burned all the way up, and because you had this transition from the physical to the smoke, to just everything going up in the air. I think that was where they got this idea that our thoughts are abstract; they're hard to pin down, and so the burnt offering may be atoning for that. So he says that we actually find that there are many limbs of our body that have a kis, many limbs of our body that have a pocket, and what we can do, and you can actually you can use the pocket, right, to prevent you from sinning with these limbs. So when it comes to eyes, sins that you may commit with your eyes, you actually have a pocket, you have eyelids, and you can close your eyes, and you can protect yourself from a sin that you may commit with your eyes. Okay, when we say the Shema, I think we're trying to focus on listening, and so we close our eyes so that we can really focus on what it is that we hear. He says, Efshar le'etom et ha'oznaim u'limena mishmiat lashon hara. If we want to prevent ourselves from hearing lashon hara, from hearing evil speech, we can plug our ears, right? And in doing so, we can prevent ourselves from hearing evil speech. And he says we have lips, and we can close our lips. Our lips have pockets, right? And we can close our lips, and in closing our lips, we can prevent ourselves from speaking, from speaking lashon hara, from saying evil things. He says, "Aval ein lasum ma'atzor u'machsom lemachshava shebamoach." But the problem is that we can't actually put some sort of pocket over our minds to prevent ourselves from from thinking, from thinking about things that maybe we shouldn't be thinking about. And so that's why we have this olah, because we have to have some way of acknowledging the fact that there's an aspect to the way in which we're unable to control our thoughts that we need a little more kapara for. Okay, so there's this teaching. I want you to stay with me for a moment. Okay, this idea that the olah, that we have thoughts that sort of run away with us, and we need a way to, there's a special problem with being able to atone for, or let's say to control our thoughts and to keep them where we need them. And then I want to share with you a beautiful teaching from Machon Hadar, a wonderful yeshiva, egalitarian yeshiva in New York City, where I've had the chance to study. And this is from the Dvar Torah that was sent out this week by Rabbi Avi Strasberg. She is a wonderful rabbi and a wonderful teaching, and she goes later on in Parashat Tzav, where she describes the Urim and Tumim. On the breastplate of Aaron was these stones that appear to be that appear to light up in a certain way, and later in the book of Numbers, when Joshua is being instructed, it says, have Joshua stand before Eleazar the priest and the entire assembly, give him some of your authority. And what's supposed to happen is that Joshua is the leader, and he's supposed to stand before Eleazar the priest, who will obtain decisions for him by inquiring of the Urim before the Lord. Okay, so the basic idea is that when Joshua has a question about leadership, about what to do, Joshua can turn to the priest, and the priest has these Urim and Tumim that Rabbi Strasberg describes as the sort of like the magic 8-ball, that the Urim and Tumim sort of say, yes, you should do this, or no, you shouldn't do this. And what we had was this sense of certainty. We have a direct line to God, and we know what are we supposed to do. Should we go to war or not? Yes or no. Okay, and if it comes up yes, then we have a sense of certainty. And she describes how in the Mishnah Sota, we read Mishanetu Nivi'im Harishonim. Once the earlier prophets that the Talmud describes as David, Shmuel, and Solomon have died, Batlu Urim v'Tumim. Then the Urim and Tumim were lost. And so at this certain point in Jewish history, there's no more Urim and Tumim. And there's a sentence that I want to read you that caught my attention in her Dvar Torah. She said, after that point, we are left with the following question. What does it mean? And here this to me, I think, is why it caught my attention, particularly in this moment that we are living through. What does it mean to live in a time where there are many questions but no clear answers? What does it mean to live in a time when there are many questions but no clear answers? And she goes on to describe ways that the rabbis give us for what it looks like to live with uncertainty. To live with uncertainty. And she says, she says that at sometimes the rabbis go ahead and make up psak. They wrestle with all of the questions, and they move forward and they make a decision. But the other thing that they do sometimes in the Talmud is they arrive to teku. Teku, which is an Aramaic word that essentially means you have to let it stand, and it's only when Elijah the prophet comes that unanswered questions are going to finally have answers. And in the meantime, we have to live and be in that uncertainty. And we are living in a time of uncertainty. We're living in a time of anxiety. We don't know when this coronavirus plague is going to end. We hope that the predictions that we've been given, that we will have a rough couple of weeks, but we will have flattened the curve. But the truth is we don't know. And when we are living with anxiety, I don't know about you, but to connect it back to this first teaching about our thoughts, the truth is that I know for myself that my mind races. My thoughts run away from me, and I struggle mightily to find focus. I struggle to, I don't have a keys, I don't have a pocket for my mind. I struggle, I can't close my ears and close my mouth and close my and close my eyes. I can do those things, but I struggle to calm my mind. And I don't have an olah. I don't have a sin offering that I can just offer up on the altar to help me deal with that. And so we're left with these questions of how do we live with anxiety? How do we live with fear? How do we live with the lack of certainty? And I want to share a couple of ideas. First of all, just before Shabbat on Facebook, on our Bethel Facebook page, and we'll be sending this out as an email. There was a problem with the email before Shabbat, so we'll send it out after Shabbat. But Dr. Adam Goldstein, who's a member of Bethel and a friend and a wise teacher, he and I wrote a letter for our congregation from the perspective of both. Adam provides many insights from the perspective of a physician as to how he deals with anxiety and fear, and many important lessons from his own work as a physician and from the medical literature, and I commend his words to you. And when I thought about that question from the Jewish perspective, the word that I came back to in the teaching that I offered in the letter is about the word bitachon. Bitachon, from the root of it is bet, tet, chet, and it comes from to trust, to have a sense of trust in God, because for the rabbis, God was the source, the ultimate source of our security. If I could give to any of our teenagers, to any of our children, and the truth is to any of us, one beautiful aspect of trusting in God is that when we trust in God, when God is the ultimate source of our security, then there's nothing that any human being can say or do that can take away from us our dignity. Because our dignity comes from the fact that we are created in the image of God. And that means that there's no bully who can say words about us that will make us truly afraid, that will wound us truly, that there's no stare from another person, there's no sense of shame or embarrassment that should ever truly hurt us, because God is our ultimate sense of security, and God, as we said earlier in the prayers, has a sense of love for us and is always ready to take us back, and God always sees who we truly are. In a wonderful curriculum about midot from the Institute of Jewish Spirituality, the author describes bitachon, this sense of trust, as being on a spectrum, because true bitachon, true trust in God, doesn't mean that God is all-powerful and therefore our sense of trust relieves us from any responsibility. That, to me, as I've said in other settings, Judaism, religion, true religion doesn't make us less responsible, it makes us more responsible. And so true bitachon, true trust in God, doesn't mean that we have no responsibility whatsoever, that we can be passive. But rather, true bitachon exists on a spectrum between, on the one hand, taking initiative, taking responsibility, doing the things that we are supposed to do, that we're responsible for. In this moment, I have hand sanitizer. I don't say to myself, God will protect me, and therefore I don't have to wash my hands. We don't say like this, if you'll forgive me, this idiot and this person who committed what in my mind is a chilul Hashem. Unfortunately, there are some ultra-Orthodox Jews who in my mind are committing a chilul Hashem, and there was this pastor who was arrested in Florida because he said, we don't need to social distance. We can flaunt these rules because God will protect us. No, that to me is an abuse of religion, not a use of religion. Religion makes us responsible for doing the things. We are not meeting this morning in the sanctuary because our religious community has a sense of responsibility. Yes, God will protect us, and one of the ways that God protects us is by giving us knowledge of science and about the world, and that we understand that we will keep our physical distance, and that can help to preserve our health, and therefore we're responsible for that. Religion doesn't say to us, God will feed all those who, God will, it says in the prayers, God will feed the hungry. That doesn't mean that we don't have any responsibility to feed the hungry. It means we have to feed the hungry. And if there are people who are suffering from this pandemic if the suffering is focused more on those who have no health insurance and more on those who have no, who have no food. Right here in Durham, there is a fundraiser that we also posted on the Facebook page that I've contributed to for the Durham Public School Foundation, because so many children right here in our own community are going to be without food because a member of the Durham Public School contracted the coronavirus and they can no longer do food deliveries. And the fact that this virus is affecting more devastatingly people who are poor in our community is a response. That is something that we are responsible for, not that God is responsible for. That there are parts of this pandemic that we are responsible for creating a better society, a better world where children don't go hungry, for washing our hands, for keeping our social distance, all of those things. And yet, there is a continuum, because the problem with believing in our own responsibility and initiative is we can also say to ourselves, as it says in the book of Deuteronomy, I'm responsible for everything. My strength and my hand got me everything in this world. And what we end up doing is not leaving any room for acknowledging, first of all, when something good happens to us, that what good happens to us doesn't come only from our own hands, but what good happens to us comes from God. And when something bad happens, we've lost the ability to make room in our hearts, to have bitachon, to trust that it's going to be okay. And so we're filled with anxiety and we're filled with fear, and our thoughts run away with ourselves, and we are consumed. And so what I want to offer this Shabbos as a teaching from our tradition is just a moment. I'm going to take 30 seconds. And what I want to encourage us to do is to quiet our minds, to quiet our thoughts, and in this quiet, wherever we are, maybe by closing our ears, closing our eyes, but even just focusing our thoughts on how we are part of something much larger than ourselves, on how the world has been here long before us and will continue to be here long after, on how our tradition tells us that God is the creator of this world, and therefore we are not alone. And inviting us to search in that quiet and search within ourselves and to find a place of trust in God, that it will be okay. It will be all right. טוב כי לא חלו רחמך והמלחם כי לא תמו חסדיך כי לא תמו חסדיך מעולם קיווינו לך. כי לא תמו חסדיך, because your loving kindness is never exhausted. מעולם קיווינו לך. Forever, always we will trust in you. כי מעולם קיווינו לך, כי מעולם we will always trust in you. And I turned also to the ending words of the Haftarah. V'hinei anochi sholech lachem, the prophet Malachi declares, I am sending to you and for you, et Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, who will bring tidings of a better day, lifnei bo yom Adonai, before the coming of the day of Adonai, a day, Yom Adonai, Hagadol v'Hanorah, that great and awesome day when God's presence will come. A better day will come, and let us say, Amen. Amen.